Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics: the young and the restless spoilers. The silence surrounding Jill's absence had become deafening. As chaos unraveled at the Ashby estate in Nice, marked by deception, betrayal, and the chilling murder of Dom and Kane, those who knew Jill couldn't help but ask the same question: where was she? A storm of such magnitude had torn through the lives of everyone connected to Kane. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Yet, Jill, one of the most formidable women in Genoa City, had remained curiously silent. For weeks, there had been rumors that she was ill, that perhaps her health had declined, and she no longer had the strength or desire to involve herself in the increasingly volatile politics of her family. But those who truly understood Jill knew better. Illness might slow her, but it would never silence her, and her absence from a scene as explosive as Nice could only mean one of two things. Either she had been caught off guard by the disaster, or she had orchestrated it. Jill had never been a woman to tolerate disorder unless it served her purpose. Her life had been built on a blend of cunning strategy and instinctual rage, and when those two things collided, the consequences were often catastrophic for those around her. So when whispers began to spread that Carter, the elusive and manipulative figure who had been lurking on the periphery of the Ashbate, wasn't working alone, suspicion turned quickly toward Jill. It wasn't just that she had failed to intervene, it was the eerie possibility that she had been pulling strings from afar. The truth, as it stood, was murky. No one could confirm where Jill had been during the events that led to Damien's death. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Some claimed she was receiving treatment for a chronic condition in Zurich. Others insisted she had retreated to a private villa in the Alps to grieve a personal betrayal that had never been made public. But the fact remained her son had been at the center of an international scandal. Her family name dragged through the dirt, and Jill had said nothing, done nothing until now. Word came swiftly that Jill was boarding a private jet. Her face like stone, her voice clipped and ruthless. She was coming to Nice, and she was furious. Not just at the death, not just at the chaos, but at being blindsided. No one had told her what was happening, or perhaps more accurately, no one had dared. And now that the story had broken into the open, she intended to reclaim control with a vengeance. She would defend her son Kane, regardless of whether he was guilty or not. She would clean up the mess that had tarnished their legacy. But most of all, she would find out who had dared to exclude her. What Jill didn't know, what none of them knew, was that her arrival in Nice would ignite the next phase of destruction. Because Kane, beneath his carefully curated exterior of grief and shock, was spiraling. The accusations had begun to tighten around him. Amanda no longer looked at him with trust. Victor had begun investigating him from behind closed doors. Even Lily had started to question his version of events. And Jill's arrival, intended as a shield, would instead expose vulnerabilities Kane had worked hard to keep hidden. For Kane knew that if Jill began to truly dig into the night of Damien's death, she might uncover the very things he could no longer control. More disturbing was the possibility that Jill already knew, that she had been watching from a distance, monitoring everything through Carter. Carter had been a ghost, intelligent, cold, and alarmingly obedient. He had access to rooms others could not enter, a way of manipulating the environment so smoothly that even seasoned players like Nick and Phyllis couldn't pinpoint his game. And now, pieces were falling into place. His movements, his timing, his silence. He had been too effective, too well-informed, too embedded. And as the smoke cleared, a new theory surfaced among those brave enough to voice it. Carter was never working alone. Carter had been answering to someone, and that someone might have been Jill. If true, the implications were staggering. That Jill had orchestrated the chaos in Nice, not out of malice, but out of some long-term strategy. That perhaps Damien's presence had disrupted her plan. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. That his growing influence, his alliance with Lily, his control over sensitive business dealings had become too dangerous, and in that scenario, Carter's job had not been to protect Kane, but to protect Jill's empire by eliminating the threats one by one. If Damien's death was part of a broader design, and Jill had been the architect, then the legacy she so fiercely protected was soaked in betrayal. But Jill was nothing if not adaptive. The moment she stepped off the jet in Nice, the energy shifted. Her rage was like gravity, pulling everyone toward her, demanding explanation. She stormed through the estate like a queen returning to a burning kingdom. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. She interrogated Kane, her voice sharp, her eyes harder than ever. She wanted the truth, and she wanted it now. And when Cain faltered, hesitated, stammered some preconstructed defense, Jill saw through it instantly. She may have come to protect him, but she would not tolerate weakness. She demanded to see Carter, only to be told he had vanished. That too unsettled her because Jill didn't tolerate ghosts. She controlled them. What Jill didn't expect, what no one expected, was the arrival of Na. Word had reached her that Damien, her son, was dead, murdered, and she had arrived in Nice, not with sorrow, but with vengeance. She didn't care about politeness. She didn't care about protocol. She wanted names. She wanted justice. And she wanted blood. Na stormed into the estate without waiting for permission, and the confrontation between her and Jill was volcanic. Two mothers, two legacies, one corpse. The air cracked as Na screamed that her son had been betrayed, that the people in this house, this beautiful house, had allowed him to die. And Jill, who had expected to play judge, jury, and savior, suddenly found herself on the defensive. The confrontation escalated quickly. Jill insisted she had nothing to do with the death. Na accused her of being a puppet master, of hiding behind layers of influence, while her agents, like Carter, carried out unspeakable acts. Jill denied it. Subscribe our channel for more latest update, but the more she denied, the more the others began to wonder. Where had she been? Why had she stayed silent? And if she truly was innocent, why had Carter answered only to her? And somewhere in the shadows of Nice, Carter was listening, watching, waiting, because Jill's secrets were no longer safe. And neither was she. Let me know if you'd like to continue this story with a confrontation between Jill and Carter, or with Nina beginning her own investigation into the cover-up. The photograph was damning. A single image snapped in haste, but saturated with consequence. In it, Jill stood in the corner of a quiet cafe in Zurich, far from Nice, yet unmistakably connected to the chaos erupting there. She held a phone in one hand, her posture stiff, her expression ice-cold. Across from her sat a man no one could mistake. Carter, his face, usually hidden in shadows, was now captured in brutal clarity. And though the image alone said nothing, aloud, it screamed the truth to those who understood the language of silence. This was no coincidence. This was command. The moment the photo was released, slipped anonymously to a contact in Genoa City, and quickly forwarded to authorities and select members of the Newman and Abbott circles, everything changed. For weeks, speculation had spun in controlled whispers that Jill, ever calculating, had stayed too far removed from the mess in Nice. That Carter, always one step ahead, seemed to act with information no one else could access. That Cain, spiraling, desperate, and increasingly unstable, was not the puppet master, but the puppet. The photo confirmed what the victims had suspected and what the guilty had feared. Jill had orchestrated the entire thing. What was unclear, still buried in ambiguity, was motive. Why? Why had Jill, a woman with nothing left to prove and everything to protect, constructed a scheme so twisted that it led to the murder of Dom and Cain and the public dismantling of her own son's life? The answer, like all things with Jill, was rooted in control. Control of legacy, control of narrative, control of power. Damien had been a threat, not through violence, but through brilliance. His alliance with Lily, his growing influence in business, his ability to sway loyalties. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. These had made him dangerous, not just to Cain, but to Jill, because Jill had spent decades building something fragile. A family empire constructed from betrayal, redemption, and reinvention. Damien represented a truth too strong to be manipulated. And for that, Jill had decided he had to be eliminated. The phone call between her and Carter, recorded, transcribed, and finally leaked, was cold, chilling, and deeply revealing. "You know what to do," Jill said, her voice like frost. "He's getting too close." Carter asked no questions. He didn't need to. Their relationship was forged in transactions, not trust. He was her tool, and she wielded him with precision. But the arrogance of power always leaves footprints, and Jill had left hers across Europe. Cain had become collateral damage, a son she had long struggled to fully accept, now framed to take the fall for an operation he never even understood. Inside the ash bait in Nice, Cain was unraveling. Every day brought a new rumor, a new accusation, a new betrayal. His mother had arrived days earlier, storming into the estate like a savior, only to twist the knife deeper with every word. She insisted he cooperate with the investigation. She encouraged him to distance himself from allies like Amanda and Lily. She said it was for his own protection. But Kane, tired of being lied to, began to see the truth. Jill wasn't protecting him. She was isolating him, positioning him as the villain. And when he confronted her in the garden under the moonlit haze, her answer was damning in its cruelty. You were never meant to lead, Kane. You were meant to follow, and when you stopped following, you became a liability. That night, Kane packed a bag, not to flee, but to prepare. If he was going down, he wasn't going alone. And fate or vengeance delivered the first opportunity when Carter was captured at the border outside Marseille. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. His attempt to disappear under a new alias failed. He was tracked by facial recognition and flagged instantly. When he was brought back to Nice, battered, but smirking, the entire room froze. He said nothing at first. Just stared at Jill from across the table in the interrogation room. But the tension broke when Jill refused to look back. And Carter, betrayed, humiliated, abandoned by the very woman who had built him, decided to talk. His confession, once triggered, came like a storm. He outlined every instruction, every transfer, every message. He described how Jill had chosen Damien as a target months earlier. How she used Carter to monitor conversations, intercept emails, and manipulate events from the shadows. How the murder itself may not have been directly ordered, but was certainly not discouraged. She gave me the map, Carter said. I just followed it. And in that moment, the monster behind the curtain was no longer theoretical. Jill was no longer a matriarch. She was a conspirator, a criminal, a tyrant cloaked in pearls. News of the confession spread quickly. Victor's team leaked it to media outlets to neutralize Jill's influence. Lily collapsed when she read the transcript. Amanda, who had stood beside Kane in doubt, now stood beside him in horror. And Kane, once defeated, found strength in the truth. He wasn't the villain, he was the survivor. And now he would make sure the world saw Jill for what she truly was. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. But retribution has a cost. The more the truth emerged, the more dangerous Jill became. She didn't flee, she didn't confess. She fought. Lawyers arrived within hours. Phone records were scrubbed. Allegiances were bought. Jill had ruled too long to go down quietly. But Genoa City had changed. Na had arrived in Nice with grief burning through her veins. Damien was her son. And now she knew who had killed him. She didn't want a trial. She wanted justice. And in her fury, Nina found unexpected allies. Nick, Billy, even Phyllis. Each of them scarred by Jill's manipulations in different ways. Together, they began planning not just her fall, but her exile. For once, Jill was cornered. And though she still tried to assert dominance, barking orders and crafting lies, her empire was crumbling. Because Carter had spoken, and Kane had risen because Nina would not rest. Because too many people had been hurt. And as Jill stood alone in the dim hallway of the Ashby estate, the same place she once ruled with silent authority, she saw in the mirror not a queen, but a monster. She didn't weep. Jill never wept. But for the first time in decades, she felt something that couldn't be spun, buried, or redirected. She felt fear, and the game at last was over. Let me know if you'd like a continuation where Jill tries to retaliate, or if you'd prefer the focus shift to Na's campaign for justice, or Kane rebuilding his life. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. The transcript reveals a gripping and intense storyline from The Young and the Restless, focusing on the fallout following the murder of Dom and Kane at the Ashby estate in Nicegill. A powerful matriarch known for her cunning and control has been conspicuously absent amid the chaos, sparking rumors about her health and her possible involvement in the unfolding scandal. The silence surrounding Jill's absence raises suspicion, especially as Carter, a shadowy operative connected to the Ashby family, appears to act with knowledge and precision that suggests he's not working alone. Whispers grow louder that Jill might be orchestrating the events from afar. Jill's sudden arrival in Nice marks a turning point, as she storms into the estate with fury, demanding answers and asserting control over the spiraling crisis involving her son Kane. However, Kane's stability is unraveling under mounting accusations, and Jill's presence, rather than shielding him, exposes hidden vulnerabilities. The tension escalates when Na, the grieving mother of the murdered Dom and Kane, arrives seeking justice, igniting a volatile confrontation with Jill. Na accuses Jill of masterminding the betrayal that led to her son's death, while Jill vehemently denies involvement. though suspicions deepen with Carter's mysterious disappearance. The story gains a dramatic twist when a damning photograph surfaces, showing Jill and Carter together in Zurich, confirming Jill's direct command over Carter's actions. This revelation, alongside a leaked recording of Jill instructing Carter to neutralize Damen, confirms that Jill orchestrated the murder and ensuing chaos to protect her family's empire. Her motive centers on control over, legacy, narrative, and power and the threat Damen posed through his alliances and influence. Kane, once a pawn in Jill's game, begins to resist his mother's manipulations, realizing she intends to sacrifice him to preserve her empire. The capture and confession of Carter, who outlines Jill's orders and involvement, further exposes Jill's criminal role. Public opinion turns against her, with allies abandoning her and Kane rising as a survivor, rather than a villain. Meanwhile, NA rallies allies to seek justice and dismantle Jill's empire. Despite the mounting evidence and public disgrace, Jill fights back fiercely, using legal maneuvers and loyalists to maintain control. Yet, for the first time, Jill experiences fear and vulnerability, recognizing her empire is crumbling and her reign is ending. The story closes with Jill alone and cornered, a fallen queen facing the consequences of her ruthless quest for power. Highlights Jill's mysterious absence during a family crisis, sparks rumors and suspicion. Damen Kane's murder triggers chaos at the Ashby estate, implicating Jill and Carter. Jill arrives in Nice, furious and determined to reclaim control and protect her son. A volcanic confrontation ensues between Jill and N. Damen's grieving mother. A photograph and leaked call confirm Jill orchestrated the murder and cover-up. Carter's confession exposes Jill as a mastermind manipulating events from the shadows. Jill's empire crumbles amid legal battles, betrayals, and a rising campaign for justice. Key insights: Jill's absence as a strategic silence. Jill's prolonged silence during the crisis is not a sign of weakness but a calculated move. Known for controlling chaos for her gain, her absence raises the possibility that she either orchestrated the events or deliberately chose to observe before striking. This highlights Jill's strategic patience and mastery of political maneuvering within her family's toxic dynamics. The duality of Jill's character. Jill is portrayed as both a protector and a ruthless manipulator. Her fierce loyalty to Kane contrasts with her willingness to sacrifice him to maintain control. This duality reflects the complex nature of familial power struggles, where love and ambition often collide, producing devastating consequences. Jill's character embodies the archetype of a matriarch whose protective instincts are inseparable from her thirst for power. Carter, as the puppet and the puppet master. Carter's role is pivotal. Initially seen as a shadowy enforcer, the revelation that he answers directly to Jill reframes him as both tool and weapon in her broader strategy. His intelligence, access, and cold obedience underscore how power is exercised not only through overt dominance but also through secretive control and manipulation. Carter's eventual confession unravels the web of deceit Jill spun. Control as the central motive. The narrative makes clear that Jill's actions are driven by an obsession with control over her legacy, family narrative, and business empire. Damen Kane's threat lies not in physical violence but in his influence and alliances, which jeopardize Jill's fragile construct. This insight into Jill's motivations underscores how control can corrupt, leading to morally and legally reprehensible decisions to protect perceived power. The impact of public exposure and media. The release of the photograph and leaked conversations marks a turning point, illustrating the power of evidence and media in dismantling carefully curated facades. Jill's empire, built on secrecy and influence, becomes vulnerable when hidden truths are exposed publicly. This reflects broader themes of accountability and the fragility of power when subjected to public scrutiny. Familial betrayal and isolation. Kane's gradual realization that Jill is isolating him to sacrifice him reveals the deep familial fractures underpinning the scandal. Jill's cold assertion that Kane was never meant to lead but to follow highlights the toxic dynamics of control and obedience in family legacies. Kane's transformation from a pawn to a survivor seeking justice adds emotional depth and illustrates the theme of resilience amid betrayal. The rise of NA and the quest for justice. Na's arrival and alliance with other characters, like Nick, Billy, and Phyllis, signal a shift toward collective resistance against Jill's tyranny. Her grief-fueled determination to seek justice, rather than a trial, introduces a powerful counterforce to Jill's manipulations. This development emphasizes the narrative's focus on justice, retribution, and the consequences of unchecked power. This story arc from The Young and the Restless intricately weaves themes of power, betrayal, family loyalty, and justice, anchored by dynamic character portrayals and escalating tension. Jill's transformation from matriarch to criminal mastermind offers a compelling study of how far one will go to protect a legacy, and the inevitable downfall when secrets are unearthed.